How's it growing, everybody? Damn, you know what? I'm just sitting here smoking this joint, and wow, it's so tasty and so terpy, and I hope you guys are smoking something great out there today, and you're looking at the flavors, and today's show is just a great show. Today's show is me putting my phone on mute for one. Today's show is really about humidity control, curing cannabis, and why it plays such a what I say is such an important role in standardization in cannabis. And I like to talk more about. A lot of people know I've been trying to standardize my cannabis for a very long time. I've talked about different ways of being about my pain control and how things work for me. And well, I think saving the terps has been a big part of the things that people see me wearing the hat, talking about Boveda and really getting into it. And really, this is something I've been talking about really since like 2006, like about trying to standardize my cannabis. And over years, I was working with Dr. Paul Hornby, and we were always looking at the standardization by activating, and and it was really cool because as time kind of moved forward, and we were looking at things, I started working with Tony and Bubble Man. We were looking at Blue River terpenes, and then I met these amazing people, and this amazing person is actually here right now, Drew. Drew's one of those amazing people that I met, and Drew works for a company called Boveda, and I think we first met. Was it ICBC?
It was either ICBC or Lyft.
I think ICBC was before Lyft.
It was probably ICBC then, but it was a memorable occasion because
International Business Conference for
yeah,
Cannabis, basically, is what this was a conference about. And I think, I mean, we became brothers. It's been good 6, 7 years, 7, 8 years, 7 years.
yeah, it's one of those relationships that you just know when you meet somebody that you know where they're coming from, you know what they're about, and it was fun because you are to cannabis what Boveda is to humidity control. You have a love for the plant that I haven't. I don't know many people that are more in love with the plant than you are, and for good reason, for what it did for you, right?
100%.
Saved your life.
And I always say that cannabis saved my life. It really got me off the opiates. It got me off of chasing my pain, and it really came down to was the terpenes, which is such an amazing thing. That's aromatherapy standardization, and when they put a lot of people know, but I actually went in for a C4 C5 cervical ilectomy fusion. They took out my C4 and C5 vertebrae. And Bubble Man and D420K, Darren and Mark Richards, they came to the hospital when I was in for surgery. I just had my surgery. I just came to, and Mark brought in 15 different terpenes. And one of those terpenes took my pain away. And at that point, it was like ding, 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 ding. It's like, how am I saving? How am I standardizing? It's like we started talking about saving the terps. This is a big part of Boveda. And now let's just talk about that. Like, I mean, people want to know what's Boveda.
So Boveda was founded 23 years ago to solve a problem. There was a guy that had invented a small wooden humidor for a handful of cigars, and it wouldn't accommodate a big mechanical, fill it up with distilled water kind of a humidification system. So these guys that all knew each other, a couple of them had deep science backgrounds and packaging science backgrounds from General Mills, which was a major food producer here in Minnesota. They got together and said, hey, Bob and Al, why don't you guys figure out a way to give us something that's portable, disposable, and foolproof that can go into a closed space and keep cigars fresh. So they worked with, in the food industry, they had a lot of experience with salt and the way you use salt in foods that are being stored in boxes of cereal and in different food packaging. They knew that salt had an ambient humidity dynamic to it. So they looked for salts that were in a range that they thought were going to fit the cigar profile and preserve the sugars and the oils that are in the cigar. Because cigars, anything organic that you harvest, like cannabis or cigars or anything, has a shelf life. And cigars are notoriously dry in most climates outside of where they're produced. So they came up with a packet that looked like this. It was a 72 or a 75% packet, and they tested it and they went to market with it, and they ended up catching the attention of the Fuente family, and the Fuentes basically put Boveda on the map by giving them their first.
Who is the Pointe family? I'm kind of curious. I've never heard of the Pointe family.
Arturo Fuente is one of the top cigar manufacturers in the world. They're
Okay, so these cigars, these aren't cheap cigars. Like these cigars, some of them are in the thousands of dollars, aren't they? Like these are.
Oh yeah, but typically, I mean, the cigars that I would smoke, they range anywhere from $8, $10 to $25, $30. But it's an investment. You know, they come 20 in a box. So, you're talking about a significant investment. And if they spoil, well, you're out of luck.
Yeah, who wants a
right.
dry cigar? I tried cigars. I used to smoke cigarettes, and I know you love your cigars, and it's a big thing. Reason why, reason why you started working for Boveda. We talked about how
yeah, that's how I fell in love with Boveda. There was a point in time in my life where I dearly loved cannabis, and I knew enough about it and loved it enough that when I stopped consuming alcohol, stimulants, and anything that affects me from the neck up, I knew that there was something about the plant and something about cannabis that was going to eventually be regarded as a medicine, something that was really going to make a difference in people's lives. So I'm an advocate. You'll catch me in the sessions out on the sidewalk in Toronto or Vancouver or wherever we are, and I'll be smoking a cigar, but I'm extremely interested in the people that are enjoying cannabis because I want people to have the ability to find the relief that they need. Your testimony, and I heard a lot of testimony from a lot of vets. I have a lot of friends that were in the service and guys that ended up with really dramatic psychological issues that were addressed pharmacologically, and they pretty much became zombies. And then they were eventually introduced to cannabis when it became legitimate for them to do that. Fascinating story after fascinating story about people finding the freedom and the peace and the relief that you talk about when you talk about your fall and I saw in the last episode you held up your x-ray for your neck, or one of the episodes I was watching, and it's a miracle that number one, it's a miracle that you didn't kill yourself with that fall. Number two, with where you were, with the kind of pain that you were in, you're a great testimony to the power of the plant and what's possible with. You really started this conversation for me about terpenes because of that Bubble Man conversation. You talked about trying those different terpenes and having one of them give you a certain sense of relief. Yeah, that's what you held up.
I figured I'd show you guys, and you can see what's happening with my neck. This is what Drew's referring to. If you guys don't know, and now you do know, I'm a cannabis patient. And what really drew me to Drew is right who he's just talking about. He's outside of ICBC, International Cannabis Business for Cannabis, I can't think right now. And he's smoking this fine cigar, and I can smell it. I don't know this guy right now, and I'm like, that's a fine cigar. I like my fine cannabis, and I'm smoking Medi Kush, and I think that's how this struck the conversation. And then you're like, well, you got to be able to hold the moisture in there. And I'm like, well, this is how Boveda came into my life, about how, and people start noticing how I started using it because of what you're talking about right now, is how it was helping patients and helping people like myself, which is like what you're saying. Boveda is being used for, in the beginning, was a big part of it was for cigars. That was
Yeah, cigars was our business, and then we got into musical instruments.
guitar cases. So that, I mean, let's talk about that. I mean, Boveda is used for several different products, but I mean, we're looking at all natural products now. So I started realizing that all these guitars, they dry out, and you're using.
Well, and that's a big investment. I mean, if you buy a nice guitar, I mean, these professionals are walking around with 15 to 30, $40,000 guitars, and they're on and off the plane, and they're dealing with a lot of fluctuations and conditions. And if they've learned quickly that if you keep that instrument in a range of precise humidity, the degradation is pretty much eliminated. I mean, there are lutenists, people that fix guitars and fine wooden instruments, that will use our packs in order to equalize the wood before they actually do repairs, because those fine woods get brittle.
Yeah.
And so we got into guitars, and then there was another salt that was appropriate for reeds, oboe reeds, clarinet reeds, stuff like that, fine symphonic instruments. It was cool because one of the major string manufacturers, D'Addario, they partnered with Boveda and came up with a pack specifically for their string sales. So they distributed the Boveda packs along with the string sales that they were doing. And that was a huge success. And then Cannabis came looking for us. I mean, I can remember back in the day when we would get a shipment of cannabis, and as soon as you opened it up, it was either already too dry or it was going to be dry really fast, because typically Minnesota is a lot like most of Canada.
Where's Boveda from?
Yeah, I'm sitting in the conference room at Boveda's headquarters in Minnetonka, Minnesota. If you ever watched Purple Rain, the movie about Prince, he rides around Lake Minnetonka on the purple motorcycle with Apollonia. Yeah, so we're in Minnetonka and Minnesota, and the conditions here are fairly simple. We have a couple of months of the year that can be extremely humid, but the majority of the year is pretty dry. So especially in the winter months, when you start heating homes, anything that you're storing in those homes is liable to dry out really fast if you're not taking really good care of it. So cannabis industry kind of came to us. We were involved in other businesses, and then, well, frankly, we started noticing a lot of the news where they'd show, weed bust in New York, where they got all these bags laid out and the cop standing there like he just shot a bear, right? And you look at the bags and they're like, oh my God, there's Boveda packs in those bags. So the OGs knew that if they wanted to mitigate the loss that they were experiencing, because if you drove a truck of bud from BC or Pacific Northwest to New York, you're probably, without any refrigeration, you're probably looking at losing 18 to 20% of the gross weight of the shipment just because of evaporation.
$10 million, that's $2 million, just so you want to cut down some numbers really
good. Crazy.
And this is a huge thing. Like it's actually part of the more questions in here, so that we start talking about being able to control, control your money and stuff. But I mean, you started touching bases. It was 23 years ago you got in the industry. You started doing with cigars. We're talking about high-end cigars, cigars, low-end, but I mean, we're talking about quality. Then you start talking about music instruments, and you're putting these things in expensive music, and this is just keeping things so it's fresh, things aren't getting brittle. So Now we're moving a little bit forward. And when you guys started looking into cannabis, you say cannabis came to you. Now, I remember going and you go to a place here, HBI, and you would get a sea vault, and it came with these little packs that you put in there, and people were like, check out these big sea vaults. You got to use this. It's curing my cannabis. And it was actually Jason Wilcox who actually introduced me kind of to Boveda. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool. I had little soapstones you just dip in water, and that's how or you use a piece of Wonder Bread or a banana peel, or you take off some apples and throw it in there. I mean, back in the days, I mean, if you're going back into like 1986, you using a squirt bottle with some Coca-Cola or something like that just to make it sticky. It's crazy stuff we did.
Unbelievable. Or tortillas.
Like, it was just crazy. Like you said, the Wonder Bread was the big thing in the 80s and 90s. A piece of Wonder Bread in those half-pound bags to just keep it so it wouldn't smell. So, I mean, when cannabis, when did you really start exploring cannabis? What would give it the year? Because I say I started thinking at HBI, but when did Boveda really start looking at, hey, cannabis might be the industry here? Because I know when you guys came up here, it was like just scratching the door. You were just like,
yeah, well, and we were cautious because federally in the United States, we're way behind you guys. I mean, there's a lot more danger doing business in the cannabis industry in the States than there is in Canada. You guys are way ahead of us. But I'd say it was about 2006, 2007 when the connection happened between people in the cannabis industry saying, hey, we love what this product does, but we'd like you to tweak it and come up with a humidity level that's more appropriate for cannabis flower.
there's a good question. So what humidity levels were you running before you started using it for cannabis?
Well, they were picking up our cigar humidity levels. So that would have been 75, 72, 69, and 65.
Yeah, I remember 65 was, I remember seeing the 65 really early.
Well,
By the way, 1 minute warning for all you guys out there to get a joint ready or a bong rip.
Oh, it's 4:20 in a minute.
I know. Don't you like that? I never miss a 420, so I interrupt the middle of everything. Okay, stop. Wait a second. What's going on? It's a 1 minute warning. Get your stuff ready.
Well, and then if you miss it, you can go to 422 because that's 422.
And then now there's 840 if you really screw it up.
Well, I don't know if I ever really looked at the clock.
420, everybody. I hope you guys are smoking something great. Hope you're learning more about saving the terps and some of these products that we're talking about today is Boveda and the reasons why it's so important to keep and standardize your cannabis with a type of humidity control, the one I use every day.
Yeah, we didn't really know we were saving the terps back then. We weren't really conscious of what the real degradation was in flower as it.
I really remember like when the scientist Brian Rice, I did some great conversations with Brian, and really the science behind Boveda and the reason why you guys went in deep. You guys went in really deep. I remember Charlie went in deep. There's some people that like there's some great research went into trying to force the governments to trying to standardize cannabis because they do it with all kinds of foods. But I mean, for us up here, they weren't really looking at that at this point. I mean, this is now we're beginning stages before legalization, everything. We're 2014, 2015, kind of breaking down the doors. We're testing the products. We're looking at the products. And you guys, like, what is the science? Like, you guys got into the cannabis science now because I know you started looking at terpenes. If things changed that both.
We looked at trichome health, the ability of trichomes to maintain their integrity after harvest. So after the preliminary dry, this whole conversation about drying and curing, we've been down this road a bunch together, but most cannabis in the States isn't really cured. It's dried to a certain level and then it's shipped because everybody's in such a jam to get to the market. So your product in Canada almost accidentally gets more of a cure if people are using humidity control because typically it takes product a lot longer to get to the market.
6
in
months
Canada, right?
Canada.
How long?
6 months to a year. I bought products, they say, from Supreme Pharmaceuticals. And I got it August 1st. I bought it and it was packaged August 1st the year before. So we see this quite consistently. We know products on, say, Whistler Mountain, they get things going. It's got to sit in a vault. It takes 6 months for it to even be able to be sold. So you're looking at 6 months to a year before it even touches a store. It gets out the door. And this is what's
so insane.
It's insane. So you guys went into the science. You guys really went in deep. You started looking at water activity. Let's talk about AW, because I mean, I know I kind of opened up the whole world to AW here with this great little machine, you guys.
Yeah, the Aqualab. So the simple explanation of water activity is it's a standard by which you can judge whether your cannabis that you're texting is within the range that you're targeting. So the rule of thumb is you want to get below 65% because of the mold pathogen ceiling. You know, that's where it really gets ugly as far as things growing in your bud. And, you know, there's a lot of people that are going in their process, they're going down to 50 or 45 and back up to 55. There's a lot of people that try to play with flower to get it to off gas the things that you want to get out of it. The problem is at some stage of the process, the terpenes that you want to keep in the flower start evaporating with the water. So,
and when I was talking with Brian Rice, that magic number is always say 55, but once you go below 55, he explained to me, and it was pretty cool with the science that he showed with the little pipette at the Lift There conference. And really now we're starting the science, because you know, people are always saying, and I loved it. I mean, like, cannabis, it steals my terps. Oh no, that doesn't work. And I'm like, okay, so.
Well, it's any kind of an OG industry. I mean, you guys coined the term OG, but any kind of traditional industry has folkways and norms that they follow. You know, you got people that know what they're doing. This is how I grow it. This is how I harvest it. This is what I do with it after I harvest it. They know. So we'd have people that would say to us, yeah, I put a Boveda in my bag and it doesn't smell as pungent as it did before. And we're like, well, yeah. And they're like, well, that's no good, because my wholesale buyers are smelling that and they're going, I need that smell in order for them to go, oh, this is really dank bud. And we're like, no, what you don't understand is if you're smelling great weed and it's like super fragrant, you're smelling history. Because those terpenes that you're smelling are not in the bud anymore. They're in the headspace and they're coming out and they're giving you that glorious bouquet that makes every corpuscle of your body just tingle, and you go, oh man, this is going to be so fabulous. Not necessarily, your nose knows, but it's deceiving you a little bit, because those are historical terpenes. Those never go back. Terpenes never go back into the flower.
This is what you just said. I love it. When you open that bag and you smell that, you're smelling history. That's priceless. I love that. I mean, I love that so much, because exactly what you're smelling, you're losing those terps. You got to save the terps.
So let's go to that real quick though, because here's the dynamic about Boveda. If you don't get anything out of this conversation beside this one thing, this is the reason why there's nothing available that works like Boveda. A natural salt, a saturated salt solution, which is what's in here. Each one of these packs has a natural salt and water in a binding agent. And that's,
say that right now, this is a non-toxic salt-based solution. It tastes gross, but it's non-toxic.
Yeah, and you can eat it, but you're gonna probably, it's kind of like a laxative if you end up eating a lot of it. But I digress. The point is, the dynamic of what's happening with these packs is the container that you put it in, it works really hard, really fast in order to equilibrate the headspace in that container. So when Boveda goes to work, it's the dynamic of the salt. You know, we had people that claim to be us or like us, and then they criticized us for using salt. They said salt's corrosive. Okay, salt gets on my car, you bet, it's corrosive. But salt in these packs isn't corrosive. I mean, this salt doesn't come out of the pack. But what the salt gives you that nothing else, you can't do a glycerin and water pack and truly accomplish what a Boveda pack accomplishes. Because what it does is it creates a monolayer of moisture around the trichome, and it reduces the amount of degradation that's happening on that flower. So you can put other things in your jar or your bag, and you can affect what's in there. But this is the only thing that we're aware of that truly controls what's in the environment. So this controls, the Boveda controls your jar, what's in your jar. Everything else that we've seen and tested against, they have some impact. We don't want to say that they're completely useless, because let's face it, if you put, you know, your spray bottle with your Coca-Cola, John, it's going to have an impact. Something's going to happen. You can put a wet paper towel, a tortilla, a piece of fruit. Those are things that people used to do, but now we're offering a precise, consistent two-way humidity control product that creates that monolayer. That monolayer is the difference between Boveda's solution and any other solution that's out there. And the cool thing about it is, if you get the monolayer around those trichomes, you're going to smell you go, hey, this isn't as dank as I expected it to be. Okay. But when you take it out and you grind it, and you and I have been through this before, when you grind that bud up, all that bouquet is right there. All that terpene goodness is right there. So you got to twist another one up, don't you?
Oh yeah. It's kind of like this, guy. Oh my! It's saving, and I say that.
We got to get smell-o-vision.
Oh, do we ever?
Wouldn't that be cool? If we could smell, if you could hold it up to the thing, and I could go, dude, that's what kind is that?
This is Medi Kush. It's actually
that's
grown
your
by
thing.
the neighbor, and I love it because, of course, he hands me a jar, and what's in that? It's all written down there for the best neighbor, to John, my neighbor, from Mike. It's like his best crop he's ever grown. He's so happy to hand it over. That's what's so giving and sharing. And he's like, I got to make sure it has Boveda in there, because he knows he's got to store his medicine for like 3 or 4 months. And when you're storing anything like this for months on end, like you say, it degrades. And by keeping the Boveda in there, the science that you guys talked about, the stuff that I talked about Brian Rice, was about that monolayer. Mm-hmm. And once you go below 55, you lose that monolayer. And this is the big thing about curing, about relative humidity in the room. I always say I package at 67% relative humidity. My AW is 58. 57, 58. I don't go below a certain amount for that reason. You guys did a lot of research on terpenes. You did a lot of research on this for these reasons, because you wanted to ensure that cannabis was staying fresh.
Well, we asked a lot of questions. I mean, we don't claim to be cannabis experts. We're precise two-way humidity control experts. That's our wheelhouse. But we went to people all over the place that have deep history. And recently, one of the things that I know you got excited about, we got in the habit of telling people, you know, because there was a lot of flack in the marketplace, and so many people were just getting up and running and getting their first crops out, and they're like, yeah, we'll talk to you about that when we're in this for a while. And there's been so many fluctuations in the industry, both in in any market where there's been cannabis, there's been tremendous highs and tremendous lows, largely because of what the government has done with regulations. And as we got going, we relied on a lot of really smart people in the cannabis industry to help us answer these questions, because we couldn't test cannabis in Minnesota. We had to rely on people in California and people in Canada independent labs to, you did a lot of bird dogging for us as far as, I remember you went down a rabbit hole about rosin. You did yeoman's work in helping us understand with your own crops how you were taking. I was going to ask you a question. I read an article today that 71% of the U.S. cannabis consumption is unregulated, and 29% is the regulated market. So it's 20 billion. It's a $20 billion business in the U.S. for regulated, and it's an $80 billion business in, or maybe it's a 60 billion. It's a big. It's like 3 times the size. So I got to ask you this as a guy, and I'm not suggesting that you go out and buy things on the, because you grow your own. But if I were buying in the unregulated market in Canada, is it just assumed that I'm going to get higher quality than what any of these producers can do for me in the regulated market because of the amount of time that it takes to get to market?
I'm gonna straight out, corporate weed sucks. Don't know what else to say. The cannabis that's coming from the corporations that I tested, I have boxes. People see me with boxes and testing and testing and testing. And the black market's a $5 billion industry in BC alone. That's what I understand. Or maybe that's Canada. Mind you, we have 36 million people to 360 million people down there. So the percentages probably match up here,
Yeah,
right?
I would assume.
And the legal market really just went for a shitstorm because they were offering bone dry popcorn swaggy weed. It was coming in 29% AW. It was like dust. Remember that one? We don't want to name the company because we just didn't want to. We didn't.
Oh yeah, and we don't out people. We call them and say, hey, we discovered something. But here's the cool thing about this whole conversation. Cannabis conversation, the narrative around cannabis up until this year, I would say, has been largely about access. People being able to get cannabis, medical access first and foremost, and secondarily, adult use access. So access, access, access. Well, now the doors are open in Canada. You've got a medical program. You've got a robust recreational or adult use program. So what's next? Well, the next logical thing is quality. And your word that I love.
Quality should have been first, just saying, sorry.
Well, I think in a perfect world, it would have been quality first, but it was really access first, and now it's becoming about quality. So your attachment to the idea of standardization, I think, is spot on, and you're going to end up with, you know, the government's going to keep changing standards and coming up with ways to, it'll feel like a poke in the eye to the growers because they've had enough struggle to try to get it together. But that's what government does. Whenever you have government running the show and regulating everything, it's a necessary burden and it's going to be painful. But what I think will happen in Canada, there you go, look at that.
Well, I'm just showing you, if this was bone dry, uncured weed, do you really think I'd be able to do this? I always talk about how to roll a joint, and when it's cured properly, guys, you can pretty much roll the nicest joint. That's why I say Raymond used to always really great. How do you do that? Well, he had perfectly cured weed. You're like, how do you do that? Well, I have perfectly cured weed, right?
But then when you roll it like that, it's got enough sponginess to it where it really fills up the joint, and you don't end up having a real, you know, like the skin on the back of my arms. It's not all saggy like that.
I got put on the spot there a little bit, but oh,
it's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm working on it a little bit.
You've rolled a couple joints.
I don't think I've rolled a few joints. I think I've rolled a few in the past.
Is that, do you primarily smoke joints and do dabs?
I primarily dab. I probably smoke about, I'd say about 50 to probably 20 joints a day. Like, what I'm number 4. We've been in an interview for 36 minutes.
And then do you change it up, or is it mostly Medikush?
Change it up. We have different strains, so different ways, different terpenes. This is why I always talk about the terps. Some of it helps. So all the jars on the top, we have there. I have.
All right.
That one
All
up
right.
there on the end is Gorilla Glue. Then we have MKU and Pine Tar on the end. That's the tail end of the. I mean, we got 3.5 months, 8 pounds of weed.
So what's your status right now? Are you harvesting now? Or are you getting close
I
to
am in the
harvesting?
middle of drying and curing. This is what I talk about so much. It was a great day to talk about what we're doing in hang drying, curing your cannabis. And a lot of people got to understand that you need to cure your cannabis. And once you have it to that proper AW or that sweet spot, then you're going to want to save the terps and keep that freshness with Boveda. Don't go below and try to rehydrate. This is where people come into the wrong place of how to use. This is what my next question is so we start looking with the research, like how do you use Boveda? Like how do you use Boveda? So this is what I want to talk about, how I use Boveda. And I want to, so if this is the great way. So how do I use Boveda? I use Boveda after I hang dry for 2 weeks. I do a hang dry. I get my room from about 80% relative humidity down to about 67. I keep my temperatures around 65 degrees with a slight ambient fan in the background, just barely moving air, but not on the plants. So it's not like moving things around. Then I get to my stalk, just starts to snap. When I get that snap, I jar it. Then I actually take out my humidity pack and I put it in the jar. Now, there's different sizes of humidity packs and what I use, but I know if I have my AW set right, I can actually put in a nice little 8 gram for a half-pound baggie, and it holds it great for months. I love that. And then if I'm going to go into something, I found some weed the other day and it was really dry. And it was, so I would use a bigger pack to rehydrate it because now it's going to need to use the water that's in the pack to rehydrate. So I've really learned how to use Boveda. So there's two people say it 2 different ways, but
We answered anything, so you can say Boveda. We say
really
Boveda, but
I really learned how to hold my terps and cure properly, and then be able to save those terps for however long I need to. So, um, yeah. So how am I doing this? Or how do we use both?
yeah. Well, you added a little bit of John's special sauce to that recipe. The thing that when we were talking earlier about tradition and people have ideas, because you use smaller packs than we would recommend. You know, we typically recommend the 67-gram size pack for a pound, and you're using 8 grammers, and you've had success doing that. So I don't want to mess with your special sauce, but the thing about
Half pound baggies, not the big
so,
pound baggies. So you
but
guys use bigger packs for kilos. A lot of people have kilo bags, 2.5 pounds a pound. So we're just talking a basic little. I even got Boveda in my freezer.
but you could. It doesn't matter what. You could put a bigger Boveda pack in there.
Now the bigger pack that I keep in my jar had been in there for about 1.5 years. It only uses peanut butter breath. It's got that smell, and I just every time I crop, I just put that's the peanut butter breath jar. So yes, when I've really learned how to like not manipulate, but use Boveda for its reasons. So when I use a bigger pack in a jar, it lasts longer. I'm opening up that jar for the next year.
Yeah.
But if I just want to store, I'll throw that 8 gram in there when it's perfect. Once I reopen it, then.
And my point is you could use a larger pack if you wanted to, because the precision of this product is it never over humidifies. So it's not going to just be pounding on your bud. Once it reaches, like when this 62% pack encounters 62% in the container, it equilibrates. That means that it stops pushing. Like, and we had that conversation. I remember this vividly. You had just smoked a big doober out on the sidewalk at Lyft, and we were having this conversation about the dynamics of a jar of buds sitting on the kitchen table. The sun rises in the morning, comes through the window, heats the jar, changes the temperature dynamics in the jar, and without Boveda in it, the pack isn't there to equilibrate every step of the way. So if you had a Boveda, you could go sunrise, sunset, and end up with bud that never changed humidity levels. That was a cool conversation. Do you remember that?
I remember because I had it sitting in my kitchen on the thing, and I also had it in a baggie, and it was sitting there, and I was looking at that. This conversation was me leaving it there, and coming home, and I was like, fuck, like, and I started seeing these changes. This is what really interests me with Boveda. Like, you gotta understand the reason why I love the product so much, and I mean, people know I've saved the terps. I was Boveda Canada. I did a lot of repping for Boveda over the last 5-6 years. I did a lot of trade shows with you guys. I'm like, Boveda works. Why? Because it standardizes my medicine. When you find something that works and you start doing all the testing, and then a lot of people came out on me and said, oh, you know, this product's doing this, it's doing that. So I'm like, well, there's no toxicity. That's what I was like. People thought that, I mean, how do you use the POX? So now we know how we use it. People talk
Yeah,
about
there were a lot of myths. People thought the packs were stealing terpenes, that the terpenes were actually going.
I had one guy saying, "You're making my weed burn black." I said, "That would have been you not flushing your weed, it's making them burn black, dude, not the pack."
And it's normal for people to blame you for their mistakes. That's cool. I mean, and our attitude about it was we listen. We listen to everybody. We take everybody's complaint seriously, and then we're like, hey, you know, one of the things that came out of this was when I was standing near your booth at Lyft in Toronto, and you handed somebody Boveda packs, and you just said, "Dude, try it for yourself." And that was really the beginning of what we called the Boveda Challenge. And you've got the challenge, don't you?
Yeah, well, I got the Boveda challenge. I was just going to talk about, you know, the Boveda challenge.
Yeah, go ahead, because I think that's important. We're not here to sell you anything.
No, we're going to just talk about a product and how Boveda works, how long it works for, what the product is initiated for, the science behind it, the reasons why this is a good product if you want to basically have fresh cannabis. If you're a grower, if you have your weed and it's, why do you want to lose it? I understand if you're buying it, it's a little different because you're rehydrating it. I was standing in the lineups and going, you need one of these, handing it out. What's this for? You need to rehydrate so you get a true experience. Because you're both ready to try cannabis for the first time, you're going to be upset because you're not going to get that true experience.
Well, and you're going to harsh your throat.
And you're going to harsh your throat. Exactly.
That's the number one thing. If you can take even mediocre bud, and if it's properly humidified, it's a hell of a lot better smoking experience.
Smooth. It's nice. It's fresh.
And it burns slower. Back in the days when you used to actually share joints with each other, you'd actually be able to pass around to 5 or 6 people. If you go to Colorado and you light up a joint, about 2 hits, that thing's vapor. I mean, it's gone because it's so.
16 years old. You get a joint, you did the biggest pull on it because you know you weren't getting it back because once it hit the group, it was gone.
And members sitting there going,
pull on it. Yeah, you're like one of these. It's kind of like you're back and forth for 20 minutes. Like,
yeah, and it's a more enjoyable experience. But the challenge we found with the Boveda challenge, we said, okay, we're done trying to sell you Boveda. We're going to send you a kit. We'll have Boveda samples in it. We got a couple of jars. We had sea vaults in them at first, and we sent out thousands of
looking
these
for little
challenges.
mason jars today. I went everywhere. They're sold out. Can't find them anywhere. I need a few. Just found some.
Oh, well, we'll send you more. But that's the deal. You put one with your bud with Boveda and one without. It's really straightforward. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, you grind it, you taste it, you tell us what your results are.
So pretty much here's the kit, guys. Love your bud. This is really about saving the terps, understanding what the Boveda challenge is. So you're going to come with this Boveda challenge instruction kit. So it gives you a pretty good idea. And you have your step 1, your step 2, your step 3, and what you're doing with it. Then you're going to flip this card over. On the back, it's going to talk about the aroma. It's going to talk about the flavor. It's going to talk about that grind. Now, we were doing medtainers, and we found they're too big, you know, XL. So we got these great little grinders in here.
Oh, that's nice.
So you have one for each jar. You get, of course, got a pack of Save the Terp matches. We don't ship lighters. You get a nice big pack of rollies, future rollies. And you get a beautiful little box. And you're going to get a hat. And you're going to get a shirt. So I already have one Boveda challenge kit going out. And I don't have chat going right now. But if we're looking for people, if you're in the midst of cropping, if you're a home grower, and you're interested in taking the challenge, we're going to choose somebody through today's show. Anil's actually probably looking at the chat room and stuff like that. So you guys got the next 14 minutes to see how many.
Even people that watch this later, why don't you aggregate a bunch of people that want to participate And then we'll take a look at the list together and we'll just randomly choose 10 or 20
There you go.
and get them hooked up with the
You're gonna
challenge
control
kit.
the
And
US. I'm gonna do Canada, and this is gonna be your challenge out there. If you're watching the show, you're gonna be getting a Save the Turf hat. I got a box of shirts, right?
and then I've also got these gators. You know, people hate me at the home office because I give away
I know, me too.
more.
I think I'm the same giveaway over here. I'm like, just load it up. Because you really got to understand the product, and then you get to kind of use it, understand it, know it. Most people that I know that are patients, that are connoisseurs, that are storing their cannabis for long periods of time, they're all using Boveda now. They really realize that. At first they denied it, right? That was 5 years ago. Now they're like, shit. Oh, you got one of those in your packet. That it makes it. I love it. I so love it. I mean, the research you guys done behind it, the information that you've offered, and where you're going with the products and stuff like that. But I mean, we talked about water activity. We talked about saving those terps. I mean, what's Boveda looking at for the future? I mean, what do you guys? Where's the direction that you see the company going now that we're in the cannabis industry? You're seeing so many different things and how it's affecting patients, how it's affecting the profiles of different strains. Like, I know you guys are doing the research more. So what do we see?
So I think it's easy for people that are in the cannabis industry to feel like they've really been doing it for a long time. But the reality is we're still very much at the beginning of understanding what this plant's capable of doing, how it's capable of affecting our society, how it's capable of affecting our economies, the way that this plant can improve our lives and be a benefit to people. Certainly there'll be some drawbacks like with anything, but the reality is there's a lot more good that's going to come out of this industry and this culture, cannabis culture, than anything negative. So our goal, you know, we'd love to see Boveda in everywhere flower is present. I mean, it'd be awesome. You know, we dream about that because we heard the stories and we know what the impact is of proper humidity control and the monolayer, you know, that I think we're going to discover in the next couple of years that there's a real problem in the cannabis industry in terms of quality because there's no real predictability across markets. Like in every other business, there are standards and there's parameters and you got to keep things within certain limits and all that. We really haven't had that in the cannabis industry. So I would suspect that safety, number one, government concern is safety. Number two, government concern is the taxes. The number three government concern will be the quality and the patient experience. Safety and then the money and then the that's my expectation. And I think you're going to see a lot more call for people homogenizing the way they do their curing processes, really understanding what the quality is that's going out the door. I mean, people are measuring things today that they didn't measure 2 years ago.
I'm measuring. We never measured the water activity in cannabis. I've never done that.
And you never measured light. You've been measuring light. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff.
I'm all over the light. I'm looking at and lighting is a big thing about saving terps too. And people really got to understand this whole process of water, saving the terps, lighting, humidity control, standardization. It's what I really push for. I mean, I found my magic. I know what standardizes my cannabis now, my flower. It's Boveda. It's standardized. It keeps it exactly where I need it. Gets always fresh, those terpenes. I reach up into a jar that I've had sitting up here, okay, and we're not. This is like 3.5 months. 3.5 months in a jar. Oh yeah. If this didn't have Boveda in it, if this wasn't in here, Do you really think that this would? It just smelled like some dry weed because I have those dry weed jars. Before I was introduced to Boveda and I started using the product, I tested all different products. I tested the Medix two way. I've tested the little discs. I had these.
You've tested them all.
And you know what? I've tested them all, and I just know what works. I know what keeps my cannabis fresh. I know what's saving my terps because every time I open up this jar, it's like, damn, that's what we're looking for. And I think the industry and I see it changing every day. I mean, the stages that we went through and the trade shows that we went through and the fun and the education you guys offered. Like I said, that we never talked about what Brian Rice did. It was awesome. So what Brian is talking about, we're talking about that mono layer now because we have to kind of go back on something that I kind of want to just touch bases on. That mono layer we always said was that sweet spot was 55 is what he said to me. He says like 55. It's kind of like having this little layer of saran wrap, thin layer of saran wrap over top of that terpene head. And once you go below 55, it evaporates. You can never get it back. And at that point, things completely change. And how we explain that to you is he had this little container. It was full of cinnamon, just raw cinnamon. And you'd smell it like, wow, that smells amazing. They're like, yeah. And he goes, so that would be about 50% AW. There's nothing protecting it. And then he put a drop on there. He's like, yeah, you can smell it. Yeah. And he goes, okay, so that's about 54. And he put another drop on there. And you're like, wow, you can barely smell it. He goes, that's about 58% AW. And he did the fourth drop. He's like, I can't really smell it. He goes, well, that's the 62%. But the flavor and the smell was still there. And all he had done was put this little drop of water on there to what? To protect it from evaporating. Now think about that. Now, if you would have just had no water on top of that, what's evaporating first? All the terpenes, that smell that's coming off. Not the water isn't evaporating. And where Boveda is actually not evaporating the water, it's holding that so it doesn't evaporate and you're saving those terps. And it's quite very, very, I loved it. It blew. I was like, Brian, you got to come over to my booth. This was the last lift here in Vancouver. Not yeah. Was it this year? I think it was this year, just before
January.
COVID. Yeah, it was January. So probably the last trade show.
Boy, was that a great show.
It was one of those other ones, memorable shows that we.
If that's the last show we ever have, it was.
I was thinking that's like the last show that Cannabis had. Right. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, it was fun. Conference in January, but that little education there with that pipette, showing people and smelling it, and really starting to understand the science, the research that's gone behind this, and really understanding why we have to hold that water activity, that water. People call moisture content. They go like 12%. Well, yeah. AW is the proper term.
So I think what you've discovered, though, is that there's a story to be told, and you've been telling it. You do a great job of telling the story. We've been telling the story. We're using the challenge kits to help people understand on their own terms what we're trying to tell them. But the big picture is we've probably only scratched the surface. We've probably only reached, I suppose, 15 to 20% of consumers have a clue about water activity and about the monolayer and about quality. I tell you what, your unregulated buyers in Canada have a real understanding about quality because they're not dealing with this 5, 6, 8 month to a year delay going through the pipeline. And I think we can solve that for the regulated market. I mean, if you properly store with Boveda and then package with Boveda, there's a cost involved, but I think the return on investment will blow you away.
Competitive business. It's called saving those terms. It's called having I know I did a lot of clubs here in Vancouver. There was like 180 of them, and I already know certain people that use Boveda, and they made sure. Oh yeah, I got it. Yeah, and there it would always sell it that people would line up. It's kind of like anything. When you get a special release of anything, you line up for it.
Right.
Well, this particular grower would come into town and he cured his weed properly, hung dry, and he used his Boveda pack and he got it in there. People would be like, run it, they got the weed because it was fresh, it was nice, it was flavor, it had everything you needed. Yeah. And this is what's important. And you see that in the industry now, and you see certain companies that are actually using humidity control, and they're doing better than any other company. I know that. because I already see the people who talk about these companies in question that are using different humidity control packs in the industry. Now, I like to see more of it. I think the future is going to be one in every pack, and I said that to you guys. That's my dream, standardization. And
Yeah,
just
you
laughed at
you
me. I was like, I would like to see one of these in the very beginning. Like this should be in every pack. Like this should be in every time you buy anything over an ounce, but you guys grams. We have all different sizes. Like let's talk about. We have how many different sizes does Boveda come in?
The smallest one is about a gram, and that'll accommodate up to an eighth. Then the next size is this.
So those are the great ones for the pre-rolls, right? For the
Yeah, well, this one also works in a pre-roll multi-pack. This is the 4 gram, and this will do up to a half an ounce. And then the 8 gram will do up to an ounce, and then the 67 gram. I should have actually had one here to show you. That's the one you.
Funny, I should have one too.
Yeah, it's
over there.
It's about yay big, and it covers up to a pound. And then we've got a 320-gram pack. That's what our packs weigh. And that will accommodate 5 or 6 pounds in a tote or a bag. Yeah. So there's different sizes. I think innovation-wise, you'll see some developments as far as how we work with packaging companies, bag companies, jar companies. You'll see some development in some new technology in terms of how the Boveda is delivered.
I'd love to see real cannabis terpenes actually in some of these packs for those certain strains, so we can. I always like.
Oh, dude, that would be so cool. But part of the problem is most of the regulations, at least on the state side, like California regulations, don't allow you to add anything.
And there you go. So it's all about regulation. I just said because I have my one pack that's 67 gram with the peanut butter breath. And that pack actually has that little bit of smell of peanut butter breath in it now because I've been using it just for the peanut butter breath. And I was like,
well, and we talked, we had great talks with the people from Humboldt Seed Company, Ben and Matt. They were very solicitous about the idea of adding terpenes to packs. And it's a great idea. It's just prohibitive. But who knows? Maybe we can get that changed. I mean, there's some other. We probably have some bigger fish to fry as far as getting it to be scheduled in the United States and not having it be the equivalent of a Schedule I narcotic.
You guys were pushing on this on the U.S. I thought that's what Charlie was doing there. He's doing a little big push on the government. I know we were pushing on this side of the government and trying to get things so they were able to certify. We had those letters that came back about how they can use a humidity. Remember little thing you had government pounding away on the door and just like knocking and knocking and knocking and knocking and say, hey, come on, let us in and get the foot up there and start pushing.
We've worked hard. I mean, we've worked in every jurisdiction where there's been legislation. We worked in Florida, we worked in California, we've worked in every state where there's jurisdiction, entertaining the idea of either a medical program or an adult use program.
Because you guys believe in it, you know it's there, you know it's needed, and you don't stop. I mean, where do we? So let's do some shout outs here. Where do we find Boveda? You guys got Instagram, you got Facebook. Like, how do we find you guys? Like, you got different. You have your cigar, you have your cannabis. So let's do some shout outs here. We're getting down finding out.
Yeah. So the Instagram handle is @Boveda Cannabis, just the way it sounds, @Boveda Cannabis, and you can go to, you can reach us on Facebook at Boveda Cannabis. You can reach out to John. I mean, John's been a tremendous liaison for us in Canada. We've got Canadians on our team now. We've got people, we had John and then we added Jed. Jed's out in Nanaimo, or however you say that island.
Jed's on the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, Nanaimo.
Jed was going to jump in here today, but I know he got busy with his kids. We had Scott. He was going to jump in here. He's actually one of the owners. I would say son.
He's having another baby.
I know. Look at that.
Did you know that? That's pretty cool.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So definitely, you guys, if you want to know more about Boveda, just Google it. Boveda. Boveda. You're going to learn all about this. There's all kinds of great information on the site. Yeah, there it is. I'm saving terps.
Yeah, and we're happy to help you. We're not going to try to shove anything down your throat. We'll help you in any way we can with your cannabis or your hemp, or you may have some unique applications. You know, we had people come to us to keep tea fresh. Boveda packs are being used in tea products. There's medical devices that people have that are humidity sensitive. We're involved in trials with that.
Nice.
I mean, we keep things at a really precise humidity level for long periods of time. So
keep it
put
fresh,
us,
baby.
put us to work, man. We'll help you out.
There you go. So you guys want to know more about Boveda, definitely look that up. If you want to get interested in the Boveda Challenge, US or Canada, please email us. And you're going to send an email. Okay, you're going to send an email to me. There you go. It's going to go to Med.
Oh, isn't that cool how that popped up right when you said that? It's like magic.
There you go. Check that out. So send an email to me, and that's where we're going to get the information. People are going to know where you can kind of get a hold of me. You can definitely check us out on all our shows here on pod.tv. So on Mondays, we got the Carly Marley Show. On Tuesdays, we got Neil Magnuson. On Wednesdays, we got Greg Marijuana Man. Thursdays, we got BC Bud Gal. She chimes in. Fridays, I'm here. Saturdays, we got Larissa. Sundays, I don't know what's going on, but it should be something. I don't know. I'm just There you go. So we got Anil in the background. He's the one who holds this all down. He takes care of us. He sends out the emails. He makes sure the Zooms are all running there. He's running down to the studio, guys. Don't miss another episode of Pod.tv. We love you having here. We'll always see you next time. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for coming on. How's it growing? See you next week. We talk more about what's growing on.
All right, welcome to the THC show with Neil, where we talk about the unpleasant truths of our system and our democracy here.
I help patients. I
know what you're saying.
I got rated for growing, and I'm staring at the cracks in the wall doing time, and I'm trying to figure out who I hurt. No victim, no crime.
And we look for avenues of hope and ways that we can change some things. As you can see, there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of care packs that we're handing out there. I am not a criminal.
Wow, look at this.
Right,
Hey, I got 420 for sure now. Got you.
And I'll be back next Tuesday for another episode of THC, Truth, Hope, and Change. Go about changing the world as best you can, and while you're doing it, just have as much fun as you can. Thank you.
Hi there. Welcome to the 420 Lifestyle Show. I'm Carly Marley. She's taking a dab. Thanks.
We can play the Sick Moose video.
Oh yes, Sick Moose video. Let's play the Sick Moose video.
Yeah, so that's my home. That's like all over the place, I guess.
It helps the speaker lead his audience into the scene he describes.
Oh, I'm rolling up the fattest joint I could possibly fit in this paper. If it was any bigger, it would explode.
We're talking about relative humidity inside your grow room. We're talking about inside this whole room. And when I'm curing, if I brought it down to 50, how low is this going to be? This is probably going to be around 40, right? So if you're thinking at 50, being around the 10% moisture content, that would be okay, but we're seeing that the plant active water content is different from the relative humidity inside the room. I love learning. I really, truly do. So when I look at 52, I'm seeing consistency. That's what I'm seeing here right now. I'm seeing plants that are hanging, plants that were taken down yesterday being in jars, and plants that are behind me. I'm seeing the consistency at 64% humidity inside of my room when I'm cropping, at 52% active water in all the plants. Okay, now we're learning. Now I'm learning. This is cool. So, yeah, just kind of understanding active water and relative humidity. So now that we're learning all this, I wonder how dry it was in the room at Tweed when I tested their weed at 42%. 42, it's not percentage. Active water is just a straight 42, 50, 65. It's not a percentage. I'm really trying to get into more moisture content or relative humidity. All the same, but once again, all a little different. So, pretty cool, right? Yeah. So, now that we talked about all this, and we're getting into here, and we've done all this, we've even tested sift at 42%, just dry sift, right? I mean, damn. I mean, that's looking pretty good, right? We know that it snaps. Oh, well, we did. We're looking for that snap. We know the relative humidity in the room was around 60%, 64%, just a little bit over, so which we think is like that 62%. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to put one of these each in a container. We'll let it sit for a day, and we're going to test it. We're going to see where the active water is inside of a container with a gram. Take a look at all this. Let's go to the lab. So here, let's take it to the lab. Let's grab our machine. We see what's happening here. We see what we're doing here. You can see all the different strains that's going on here, how we're doing things, how everything is here, right? Now, lights are out here because we're always getting things going. It's 420 in the house, like always. Let's go to the lab, guys. Don't forget, we're gonna actually bring that in here and put underneath that microscope. We're gonna get some really cool pictures. As you can see, I've been really taking a look at a lot of this stuff, and you know what? Some of the cannabis from here looks pretty damn good, but once again, the active water content is something to talk about. We're going to talk more. I'm going to show you more testing and to show you how, just like the containers, like this container wasn't sealed properly from Organigram, or the Aurora one was sealed, but it was like really dry. And we did Liberty. This one here was like 39. We did Grail at 46. I've been testing, okay? So I did this at the Lift conference. It's on my Instagram. You're going to see all these different testing results, but I really want to get to a point where I can start talking to you guys about active water, moisture content, relative humidity, and seeing what I just saw. I just learned something. So now, with the relative humidity in the room being around 62 to 64, it's fluctuating. That means the active water in the plant is roughly 52. That's what I'm seeing. So now we're wondering about this right here, guys. We're gonna get right in here. We'll do some more testing in here. Okay, I love this active water relative humidity thing. Relative humidity. That's between 68 to 70. Grab the bud off of here. Just grounded it up. Ooh yeah. So, and I can do this with you guys just because gotta make sure, right? Cut the sugar leaf off. Throw the clean container. Is there a muster upper? Container. weeding container. Active water machine. Oh yeah. That was the one we were just testing. Here we go again. So 57 active water. Relative humidity in the room 69. I'm allowed to clean the screen now. Clean screen. Okay, so yeah, I'm just kind of 58% active water is the highest I've ever tested when it comes to active water in anything. So peanut butter breath. Relative humidity in the room 70%, active water content 58, which is apparently the best active water content, moisture content. That's the ticket right there. Boom. 58. You're seeing it. And when you hear a beep, we're solid. So that's pretty much what we got going on here, guys. I'm always excited about certain things like this. You know, it's like you're gonna come in here. Now I'm gonna cut the top off of this plant. Trim this up a little bit. Damn right. It's picture time. So, because I'm doing all this active water content and really testing all the cannabis and really trying to find that sweet spot, of course I'm going to post this on the Instagram, right? So you're going to see this now. You're going to be able to time frame a few different things. And yeah, I'm quite excited about this. So, peanut butter breath. Active water content. And then I'm going to show my stuff. So I'm just working away here, guys. We'll see ya. You know what I mean? Just kind of doing this testing. We're going to get back in the lab and continue doing what we're doing.